Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to speak here as the HR director of Apple Company. I'm glad to share our presentation with you, and we're going to talk about these perspectives. First, we will introduce the multinational company Apple and contrast and discuss the differences and similarities of HR function between the United States companies and Chinese companies. Then we will evaluate current international human resource management policies and practices of Apple Company. At last, we will provide some recommendations to the Apple Company.
In the previous years, we have made significant achievements that we are proud of that have placed us at the top of all the technology companies and the 11th largest global company. Also, the increased number of employees from 147,000 in 2020 to 154,000 in 2021. It proves our growth. Still, the financial costs support my theory that we are becoming bigger and faster. In 2021, our brand value reached $612 billion. The annual revenue rose to $365.82 billion, and we invested $21.91 billion in research and development. Maintaining our estimate M&E has necessitated a hunt for the best talents and applying various HRM and HRM practice to ensure the expatriates and the local employees get the best rewards for their hard work.
During the next few minutes, I will discuss the recruitment and selection function of the United States and China in three aspects. The U.S. and Chinese companies both mainly rely on internal and external recruitment. Internal recruitment includes job rotation, promotion, and transfer, while external recruitment sources include headhunters, job centers, website, employee referrals, and etc. Chinese companies recruit general personnel from external sources commonly. There is almost no difference between the United States and China in recruiting general employees. They are basically recruited from online and email recruitment. Chinese middle and senior level employees are frequently recruited within the company, particularly as state-owned companies, because they trust private relations in the company positively, which is connected to strong in-group collectivism and institutional collectivism in Chinese society. In contrast, U.S. companies recruit middle and senior management and technical talents through external sources like third-party agencies. This figure from the Hofstede Insight website shows us the US is low on collectivism and China is high on collectivism. Let's move on to the selection methods. Due to the globalization of HR development in those years, the US companies and Chinese companies both select talents through unstructured interviews, tests on personal working skills, such as language skills, IT skills, and communication skills, and tests on work samples and personal psychology. Chinese companies also measure cooperation abilities through group interviews. Unlike China, the U.S. companies use a wider variety of individual selection methods, such as personality tests, background checks, structured assessment interviews, and etc. In addition, referral of acquaintances is another important selection method in China, which is related to 关系. It can be translated as interpersonal relationships in English. This informal selection method ignored policy or transparency, and it operates mainly according to the rules of favors and faith. As we can see here, this figure shows us that there is a big difference in power distance between the US and China. Due to high power distance and 关系, a few positions are selected and decided internally by high-level management in China. But the US is low on power distance. The selection of the employees may not be controlled by power. No one may refer their acquaintances by 关系 to the positions. The company only allows the candidate to pass application and interview by themselves. Okay, I would like to move on to selection criteria. Personal experience, working aptitude, and professional expertise are hard criteria used by both the US and Chinese organizations in their selection process. The United States emphasizes factors that are directly connected to the applicant's personal attribute, such as self-confidence, communication skills, leadership and organizational capacity, and observance, because of the US is a high individualism country. Chinese companies focus on assessing team-related skills and cognition of collective reciprocity rather than individual competences. Besides this, Chinese state-owned companies and private companies have their own criteria. For example, Chinese state-owned companies focus on examination scores, political identification, GPA throughout the university, and social relationships as criteria. Chinese private companies place a premium on education background, job motivation, and performance appraisal. The most common criteria in these years are the candidate's acceptance of the Chinese working culture and environment, such as the 996 working system and the employees level system, which may be illegal. In contrast, the US has no practice with this kind of criteria. Let's move to the next part.
In my part, I would like to share the performance appraisal. It's including the appraisal frequency and processing appraisal criteria and the feedback provision. For appraisal frequency, evaluation period is an important dimension of evaluation. Frequency performance evaluation. Frequency of evaluation determines the accuracy of performance. Typically, performance review in China and the US are passed annually, and this organization tend to conduct performance review on an annual basis. However, for general situation, U.S. state-owned company also conduct a preliminary assessment every 6 months. Let's move on appraisal and the process. For the U.S. company, firstly, the manager proposes a preliminary draft the performance appraisal according the employee's job requirement and negotiation with the employee to agree to take effect. Secondly, half a year after the evaluation plan take effect, the supervisor will give some suggestion for the employee. But different in China, a manager avoid to giving subordinate unsatisfactory evaluation and try to maintain good relationship with subordinate. Let's move on appraisal criteria. The development of performance appraisal systems in China is relatively new. China has also encountered many institutional and capacity constraints when implementing model performance appraisal methods. However, unlike the US experience, private companies in US understand who are the customer and it's relatively easy for them to measure employee based on the type and amount of the contribution they are making in meeting customer needs or producing a desired product or service performance. It's much easier for private sector employees to find similar jobs in different organizations in the same industry or even in different industry. So it's easier to find the benchmarks for the performance metrics, such as the number of produced per hours, the dollar amount the workers bring into the business, and so on. China companies require quite similarly with the US company. Let's move on feedback provision. Manager in China and the US must be trained to understand the important role that performance appraisal systems play in improving organization performance. Training program should focus on the information and enable manager to fully their responsibility will evaluate the performance of subordinates and provide them with useful feedback. This training not only requires evaluators with the skills and tools to conduct effective performance evaluations, but also help to improve job satisfaction among those involved in the performance evaluation process. This is the same in China and Italy.
Now we move to evaluation of recruitment and selection. I divide this section into two parts, which are traditional recruitment and outsource. The Apple former CEO Steve Jobs spent a quarter of his lifetime on talent acquisition and assembling a top-notch elite team. Like a typical company, Apple does not focus on qualification but on individual capability. There are 4 points that Apple wants their employee to be like. First is being good at a specific field or having potential, and then be flexible. And third one is enjoying teamwork, and finally, thinking outside the box. Then speaking of the process of traditional recruitment, each candidate is required to go through 3 to 4 rounds of interview. For the first two interviews, the Apple employees will ask them a series of social questions. For the third and fourth interview, the candidates will be asked to have a one-on-one interview with supervisor manager about a personalized questions such as how they handle a certain situation and their past experience. The process of outsource staffing is relatively simple. Apple first propose the hiring requirements to relevant HR company and then they both propose a commissioning plan for the hiring requirements. And after negotiation, they sign the contract. Finally, HR company recruits the required employee for Apple. And the global data states that Apple employs a number of outsource partners to supply and manufacture components for Apple, iPad, and Mac. In these slides, I will talk about the advantage of traditional recruitment and outsource. The traditional recruitment and selection process are very challenging and should be conducted carefully with appropriate methods and techniques. The recruitment and selection process should always ensure that the right individuals are hired in the right place and at the right time, which in the long-run perspective will increase productivity and profitability. This is an appropriate approach and has the following benefits. It improves accuracy of selection and thus maximizes organizational performance. It promotes employee retention in the organization, which is important. For the outsource, it first lowers the labor cost. Every company has its own reason of doing it. Not many of them chasing lower labor cost. They don't want to trade quality for price, but outsource always allows companies to get the best of both. When they outsource, they can directly pay the relative HR company. This allows company to avoid bringing employee into it, which saves company money on everything from benefits to training. Finally, I will mention the disadvantage of both traditional recruitment and outsource. Since the Apple interview process is confidential, I could only find a small amount of information about it. On the Indeed, many interviews mention that its interview process is too long, usually around 2 months, which means that even if the last interview is passed, the candidates may have gone to other company. An Apple outsourced company, Apex, have been reported to have outsourced employee who did not receive the same treatment as Apple employee. A former Apex employee confessed that you say you work for Apple and it sounds great, but when you don't get the same pay and the same treatment, it quickly becomes unimpressive. Okay, now let's move on to the next part.
To begin with, how the process works, the local employee performance appraisal process of Apple aims to hire optimal employees for different departments, which involve the make candidates meet a basic criteria for a position. If they are qualified, they will move to areas where Apple can evaluate their specific skill sets. This process serves as a formal opportunity for personal motivation, salary reviews, and the location of merit payments, including taking practice exams on working samples and interviews and utilizing different criteria to locate the best employees. For the frequency, the performance appraisal process for local employees involves evaluating them every 6 months, which aims to enable employees to be more productive. For this chart, it illustrates Apple appraisal process and criteria. Let's move on the evaluation. Four goals of Apple are known by employee immediately, and the company measures the individual according to these goals agreed upon and initiated. These individuals are informed of their contribution to achieving the company's goals. Performance management of Apple is an ongoing process. And the feedbacks give both praises and praise as a formal opportunity to provide individual counseling, motivation, salary reviews, and merit payment allocation. Employees may be based on the basis of objectives, mandates, and the results achieved in accordance with the predetermined objective jointly planned and agreed upon by individual and their supervisors. Performance management provides HR to identify any weakness or shortage in particular skill in order to replace such efficiency. Moreover, for the advantage, the Apple company can increase employee performance on company's allegiance. At Apple Corporation, all employees may better self-manage and monitor their own performance because they know the specific metrics that will be measured and analyzed, which promotes a higher level of stimulus and the satisfaction to doing a great job. And also give them practical tools for improving their performance and work with confidence. Employees of Apple Corporation are more motivated and productive when they feel valued and equipped with necessary resources to complete their work. Well, by contrast, Apple is facing a problem of human resource planning. Apple has been criticized for its lenient attitude toward the increasing number of accidents and ill treatment of its employees working in China. These incidents have damaged the core of Apple's brand image, which might lead to backcutting. And also there is also seems unfair for many Apple employees that its CEO can receive maximum of salary, and while retail employee receive the minimum, it may cause the problem on performance management. Because many employees may leave due to low compensation, the motivation and salary progression factors may lead to dissatisfaction of a local employee.
Before I present the recommendations, I would like to explain how I arrived at them. First, I explain the recruitment, selection, and performance manager here in the US and compare them to the HRM system in the China subsidiary. I assess how expatriates and local employees manage and identify the advantages and disadvantages of state practice from which I generated the evidence-based recommendations. So the IHRM policies in Apple in China can be improved by developing a standard corporate code of access to be applied in all subsidiaries, ensuring fair treatment of all employees and expatriates. The proposal can help control the unfair treatment of employees in China, as the code of ethics emphasize on the moral perspective rather than the higher demand the Chinese Apple industry is thriving. Secondly, Apple should consider incorporating external sources in the hiring and the recruiting process to reduce long wait for applications. Sorby explains that third-party hiring organizations can improve the hiring process as they specialize on a single role of hiring, which increase the speed of recruiting new hires and ensure the best candidate is selected. Thirdly, Apple should introduce AI in HR planning to increase the efficiency of employee management. AI in HR can increase employee satisfaction as it will increase the planning process, leaving significant for the HRM and the interact and solve employee issues. In addition, Apple can increase the safety measures in the China Apple factory to minimize the accidents in the company premises.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thanks for your listening, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.